official NASCAR radio station.
Fox News Talk 1240.
There's this movement going around on the net these days, and it's actually permeated into real life, too. It's this trend of people wearing a safety pin on their shirt, their lapel, whatever. You know, people wear American flags on their lapels to show that they're American, I guess. You know, people do that kind of thing. And it's a show of not so much solidarity, but it's just a show that you think a certain way politically or socially. But here's my problem with it, and it's a pretty big problem, and I think I make a pretty good point here. It's not about, this whole safety pin thing is not about marginalized people. See, that's the thing. That's the misconception that, SJWs and other folks like to push, is that, oh, look, we're helping other people. It's not about that, though, because people, for the most part, can help themselves pretty dang well. And I think we've seen that very, very well in most, minority communities. Have been helping themselves out very, very amazingly. And we've seen some great things come out of communities that otherwise 60, 40 years ago would have been pretty well marginalized and would have been seeing a lot of racism. We're not seeing that so much these days. Yeah, racism still exists, but do they need the help of some white kid wearing a safety pin saying, look, I'm a safe space, in order to move forward in society or to move forward socially and to move forward economically? What good is that doing, really? Other than just showing, look, I'm tolerant. Look at me, I'm tolerant. You see, I'm wearing a safety pin, and it shows that I'm tolerant. And if you don't wear a safety pin, you're racist, and you're probably sexist too, and you don't believe in climate change. It's all these things that stack up on one another, and it's really coming into the foreground after the Trump election, after he won the election and Clinton lost. People have sort of been springing out of the woodwork to protest the fact that Donald Trump won the election via the Electoral College, which is how the American election system works and has worked for 200-something years now. So why are we complaining about it now? Because they lost. That's why. It's because they lost. We can't pretend that it's any other reason. It's because the side that was young and angsty lost, and that's it. But really, the whole safety pin thing is a show of, look how tolerant I am. It's not about helping other people. And this is why I have zero respect for so many of these people who say that they're so into, reconciliation, and they're into helping out other people, because they make a show of how much they're helping out other people. You don't see, anonymous donations. You don't see people not trying to make a show out of helping people groups who are marginalized. Instead, you see people who make a huge show of how much they're helping other people. They take photos with immigrants. They take pictures with Muslim refugees from Syria and say, look how tolerant I am. You see, it's just the next big fad. This whole tolerance SJW safety pin thing is like the Backstreet Boys, and it's like light up Skechers shoes. It's a fad. It's a passing fad, too. 20 years from now, we'll look back at it and laugh. But unfortunately, we're not 20 years in the future yet, so laughing at it gets you called a racist these days. But really, it's all about making yourself look good. It's about self-righteousness, which kids these days have in bulk, in surplus self-righteousness. And you might say, as a counterpoint, Russell, look at you. You're self-righteous talking about this, talking about how other people are self-righteous. Well, no, because I don't really care what other people do is the thing. I'm just pointing out what I'm seeing here. I don't care what you do. You can wear a safety pin all day. It doesn't make a difference to me. But the problem is it doesn't make a difference to anyone else either. You see, wearing a safety pin and saying, look how tolerant I am, I'm a safe space, is not making any difference whatsoever. And neither are you if you're doing that. You're not making a difference societally or with other people, with yourself, with economics, with politics. You're not making any difference whatsoever. And that's where people get really angry at you, is when you point that out. You tell them they're not making a difference, and they flip out at you and say, look at all the things I've done, though. But see, I caught you. You're talking about all the things you've done. Look at all the things you've done. Look at what a big difference I've made. You see, it's all about you, isn't it? It's all about self-promotion. It's all about, look how tolerant I am. Yet again, you see, that's how it always ends up. Look how tolerant I am. It's a show. It's a ploy. You may as well be in vaudeville, because that's what it comes down to. Look at how tolerant this guy is, wearing his safety pin and walking around telling other people how great he is. Why don't you offer jobs to minorities? Or why don't you work on donating money towards scholarships for people who are underprivileged instead of wearing a safety pin? Because those things really do make a difference. Going to a museum for African American history and offering money as a donation anonymously, that makes a difference. Looking at the exhibits and learning about history, that makes a difference. But walking around with a safety pin, strutting about saying, look how cool and hip I am and I'm so tolerant, that doesn't make a difference. You're not helping anybody out. Now, you might say, Russell, why don't you want to help out the underprivileged? I do, but there's no point in talking about how much I want to help the underprivileged. What difference does it make if I talk about it? Yeah, I want to help the underprivileged, but there's not a whole lot I can do. I'm not exactly rolling in money, and wearing a safety pin certainly isn't going to make any difference. So what do? Well, I talk with friends and I learn about things, and that's pretty much it. For the most part, you know what? Minorities don't need, and I hate using the term minority because that seems to be kind of, well, I guess intolerant, but minorities don't need the white messiah to walk in with a paperclip on and say, look at how tolerant I am. I'm going to save you from racism. Because that's what it comes down to. That's what they want. That's the image that they're projecting upon themselves when they're strutting about saying, look how tolerant I am. And I see it on Twitter all the time. Oh my gosh. People I know on Twitter do this so often where they put up an image. They put up the little image of the safety pin and it says, look at my tolerance. Look how great I am. And it's not really doing anything though, other than just being there. It's like people who gloat about how they didn't vote in the election. Well, I mean, hey, you can do that, and that's awesome, but what difference is it making? It's not really making any difference whatsoever. Here in Chattanooga, we have a lot of, and I mean a lot of history. There's a lot to be looking at, to be looked at here in Chattanooga. There's so many things historically, culturally, amazing things that we sort of ignore because we're so caught up in this dialogue of how we need, reconciliation. So we need to have dinners together and talk together. But again, that's all well and good, but that's not very organic. It's not organic growth. It's forcing people to sit down and talk. That's not helping anything. Maybe the best growth, maybe the best method for reconciliation or for healing or whatever you want to call it is just to, get along and stop acting like things that happened 150 years ago still affect you now, or even, 60 years ago, make a difference to who I am right now and to who you are. And maybe it does for you, but for me, I didn't do anything to anybody. So why are you blaming me? Or for you, you didn't grow up under the same oppressive system that a lot of other people did. So it's not the same anymore. Things are a lot different these days in the year 2016, as keeps being pointed out to us. Things are different now. And we have a great opportunity to make the world a better place, but we're kind of ignoring that in lieu of we're ignoring that in so that we can focus more on look how bad these people are, or look how great these people are, or look at this, look at that. Why do we keep having to point out the differences between us? And even so, yeah, there are differences between us, but why do we have to keep exemplifying them and saying, look at it, look at it, look at it? Why can't we just hang out, man? I mean, that's what we should do anyway. Just hang out and not worry about all the things that make us different, because we've gotten around that before. We've done it in the past. We can do it again. In the 1900s, people hated the Irish. You don't think about that very much anymore. We've sort of gotten over that. Now, that's not to say that that should be ignored as a historical point, but why can't we apply that same logic with other things that we have today? And I think here in Chattanooga, we have an amazing ecosystem. We have an amazing horticulture, maybe. We have an amazing sort of microculture that we have here in Chattanooga where people, for the most part, really get along well. And I noticed during the whole issue with, and Black Lives Matter had an interesting point about this, but I noticed back when Black Lives Matter was going on, and now again with the election that's happened, there's not really been a whole lot of protest seen. People around here, we joke around about how different we are, but it's joking around. You go to the store and there's the store clerk and you joke around about the election and you don't really care who the store clerk is voting for because it doesn't really make a difference to you. You're not going to sway the person either way, so why bother? And you can go down to a store downtown and there'll be all sorts of different people there and you can be cool with them. You can hang out and it's all right. You're not worried about, what do they think of me? You don't need to worry about that kind of thing because for the most part, people are kind of cool. So why can't we just recognize that for the most part, people are kind of cool? We don't need to have all this animosity, but the animosity is being amplified by outside interests, which really want us to fight each other. And we need to resist that. We need to resist that urge to want to find the differences between us and fight each other. There's no reason for it. And yeah, there's history. And yeah, there's things that we should be looked at and shouldn't be ignored. But right now, in the current year, despite our economic differences, maybe despite our socio-political differences, for the most part, we can probably get along. And I think Atlanta and Chattanooga are great examples of how we can get along. We can do it. It's possible. The South, funnily enough, is kind of the leading example of that right now. We can get along without all this animosity, without all this anger that you keep seeing in the media. Why don't we just turn off the news? Why don't we just turn off television and realize that things aren't actually nearly as bad as they'd have us believe? Because on television, they got to rank up the ratings somehow, right? And the best way to do that is to show chaos and nonsense going on television. That's my take on it. This is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com. Go to noogaradio.com where you can listen to us live anywhere in the world on Nooga Radio. And you can listen to us, by the way, not just on Nooga Radio, but also on the TuneIn Radio app. That's noogaradio.com and the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone, where you can listen to us anywhere in the planet. Have you noticed, by the way, driving in the roads today, my gosh, it's like driving through Chernobyl right about now. Things are a mess in terms of the air quality. In fact, we're under a red alert right now, and I want to let you know about the latest headlines about the air quality here in Chattanooga. Right now, we're under a code red. There has just now, as of the last few minutes, been a burn ban. There has been a burn ban in Catoosa County. There's one for most of Hamilton, not most of Hamilton County, all of Hamilton County, but most of Southeast Tennessee. There is a burn ban, and now North Georgia mostly has a burn ban. So I want to warn you, if you're listening right now, dear listener, please do not smoke outside. Please do not light any grills, charcoal grills. They say gas grills are fine, but please don't have any charcoal grills. Now's not the time for a bonfire or a campfire or anything like that. If you had camping plans, I put them on hold for a little bit, because while, yeah, Chattanooga has amazing outdoor opportunities, there are so many of them that you don't have to go camping outside with a campfire, fortunately. So let's put that on hold for a little bit while the firefighters are trying to do their jobs. And, you know, these are very, very brave people, these firefighters. Let me tell you something. They are very brave people. We don't think about firefighters nearly as much as we ought to, because a lot of them are volunteer. They're not even being paid half the time to do what they do. And they're going out there and they're putting their lives in danger constantly, all the time, with these forest fires. And they're constantly putting their lives on the line for no reason other than just to help their fellow man. And that's really something that we should give attention to. So give a hand to your local firefighter. If you know one, shake his hand and say thank you, because, listen, we need them right about now. We really need them to do their jobs, and they're doing it excellently. And in Chattanooga right now, I just got word that this morning that yet another mountain has caught on fire near Sequatchie County, up in Sequatchie County. $1 million homes being threatened. Fortunately, on Flipper Bend, though, that fire has been 100% contained. It was 95%, I think, yesterday. Now it's 100%. But technology is playing an amazing role in this, by the way, because now we have an amazing new way of reporting these fires to law enforcement, because the 911 system is so much more advanced than it used to be. You can call 911 without much of an issue. You can report fires to the police and to the fire department over the internet now with Twitter and other social media outlets. You can message the Hamilton County Fire Department and Fire Services and the Forestry Service on Twitter and on Facebook, and they'll get back to you. You can use that to report areas of fire. You can get tips for how to handle fires online. You can get evacuation notices through the emergency alert system on your smartphone. All sorts of just amazing ways of getting the news out there over your smartphone. And, of course, we'll keep you updated as much as we can about the weather here on Nooga Radio and noogaradio.com, where you can listen to us live or get us on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. That's TuneIn Radio on your smartphone, where you can listen to us anywhere in the world here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Now, something that's come out the other day, not really the other day, but maybe the other month, is the whole debate and debacle between Google Home and Amazon Echo. And the question really that rises is, which do you want? And the answer is just dependent on what service you use the most. Do you use Amazon more than you use Google? Well, then get Amazon Echo. Do you use Google more than you use Amazon? Well, then get Google Home. These two services are really, really impressive, by the way. It's, if you know, on your smartphone, you can do the whole OK Google thing, and it'll listen to you, and it'll give you directions on different things. Imagine that applied to little boxes around your house, and you've basically got it figured out. So it'll set dinner reservations, it'll send text messages to different people, it'll set alarms for you. I've got my morning alarm every day on my phone. It'll send emails for you, it'll place phone calls for you, it'll do all sorts of things, and it all does it just through Google devices that are spread around your house. Now, that sounds great, doesn't it? But there is, of course, as always, a safety concern anytime you have any kind of device that's always listening to you and your voice wherever you may be. That safety concern is legitimate because we know for a fact that Google sells information to the federal government, and probably not just the American federal government either. Now, what does that mean for you? Because that's always the relevant question. Because you might say, well, okay, cool, but what does that mean for me? Well, what it means is, let's say that you yourself, you have sent a email over Google Home. You said, okay, Google, send an email to my boss, and it sets up the little box and asks you what you want to send, and you give your email out and all that kind of thing. That voice information and as well that email information is now possibly accessed. It's possible for it to be accessed by law enforcement entities, agencies, what have you. And then that can be stored away in a giant sarcophagus of information somewhere in the Utah desert. Now, again, what does that mean for you? Well, if you ever come into political play, of course, that information could be used as blackmail against you. But also, if there's ever a crime that's committed sometime in the future, there might be a bill sometime that says, yes, you can use information from previous dealings with this person online as evidence against him in a case from today. So there are immense amounts of data, there's immense amounts of information that's being held in various servers all across the United States of just your voice, your text communications, your emails, your voicemails, your phone calls. All these different things are being stored some way or some way and held against you potentially at some point in the near future. Now, that doesn't mean that there's a person listening to you constantly. That's not really how it works. What it means is there's a very, very, very advanced artificial intelligence that listens to all of these communications and then stores it away categorically under your name possibly, and then the category of information and keywords that were used. As an example, we knew back in the days of the Patriot Act, which is still around, but we knew back in the days of the Patriot Act, if you sent an email that had a string of letters, like let's say you sent an email and in that email, you wrote the words, blow up the White House. Now, that's pretty significant, right? Now, I don't know if you're doing it in jest. I don't know if you're doing it on purpose. I don't know if it's just a random accident. But let's say you type that email. Let's say you type that into an email string. Well, that sets off a ping, and you very well could have a visit from Secret Service agents due to that email that you sent. That is the truth. That is the case. Now, this violates, of course, the Fourth Amendment to the nth degree. But it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop with federal authorities, because we always think of the federal authorities as sort of the end-all be-all to federal or governmental oppression. And they are the end-all be-all to federal oppression, but not to governmental oppression. Look at what's happening to this nice lady in Dunlap, Mrs. Gaddy. Her house is being threatened by the local authorities, we'll call them, quote-unquote authorities, by the local governmental entity, which seems to just want her off of her property for reasons of, say, eminent domain, petty revenge, property development. It doesn't really matter. It's her property, and it wants her off of it. So the motivations don't matter. The fact is that people want her off of her property, and it's her property, so they've no right to tell her what to do on her property unless she's breaking law. And she's not. She's not in Dunlap city limits, so where does the grievance come in? There's only a crime if there's been a damage. And as far as I can discern, Mrs. Gaddy has never damaged anybody. Read more about her on David Tulis' website, Nooganomics.com, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So oppression does not end at the federal level. It starts there, possibly, but it ultimately will end up on your front door with your local sheriff's department, police department, tax collector, attorney general, what have you. Or district attorney, possibly, I should say, or your county government, or your city council, or your subdivisions, your subdivisions, what do they call them? Homeowners association. There you go. Various forms of government which are formed to tell you what to do, because that's what a government is. It's two or more people who are there to tell you what to do. And that's what it comes down to. Now, there are various forms of telling people what to do that you might say are justified. Like, say, for instance, you shouldn't have 800 tires stacked up in your front yard because that's an eyesore. Well, that's a case for the court to decide, because you can sue that person for, say, monetary damage due to your property value, done to your property value, and you can take that to court, and then a judge will decide. Okay, that's pretty simple. So why does there need to be, say, a city ordinance about these things that really never gets enforced? Well, because there has to be some semblance of an illusion of control over the situation, which really they only have if you think that they do. I mean, think about it. Think about city ordinances that we have right now. There is a city ordinance right now in Chattanooga against skateboarding downtown. In fact, in the city ordinance, there's a specific area that's sort of a demarcated zone. There's a certain area downtown where you can skateboard, and then there's areas where you cannot skateboard. And it's basically all of the city limits area and all of the fun parts where you could skateboard. Say the aquarium, you know, the area in front of the aquarium where there's all those ramps and things. Yeah, no skateboarding there. Despite the fact that I see people do it all the time, it's against city ordinance, so they're going to fine kids for doing it, or more likely they're going to fine their parents for their kids running around without their parents knowing it. But what if all the kids just said, screw it, we're going to skateboard anyway? And that very well could happen. Well, what would the city do? They got to fine everybody? Well, they can't do that because they can't catch everybody. In fact, skateboarders are very crafty little dudes. They can get away pretty easily, and they can undoubtedly outrun the police on their skateboard. So what's to be done about it? You see, when you have city ordinances like this, and when you have oppressive systems like we have in Chattanooga, we honestly do in Chattanooga with these city ordinances about, you know, noise decibel levels and skateboarding or riding your bike on the sidewalk, even though you're not hurting anybody and it's safer to do that, or it's a city ordinance about how many people you can have in your house at any given time, or whether or not your toilet's wired up a certain way, you know, all these different ordinances and codes. You turn cops into essentially meter maids. And that's what's going to happen with the whole, not Uber, pardon me, but with the Airbnb legislation that was going to be passing, where they were talking about city code, city ordinance that would determine if your house was a Airbnb compliant house, and they would have police trained to inspect it. You're turning police into meter maids. That's not what they want to do. They wanted to be cops so they could fight crime, not so they could check up on your house and make sure your bedroom is 70,000 square feet or whatever. That's not what they signed up for. You know, why are you making them do that? And furthermore, why are you making the populace subject to these arbitrary rules that are set by some committee somewhere? It doesn't make any sense. But that's what you have. And in the modern tech age, it's only getting worse, unfortunately, because you have old people in different offices who just don't understand technology. Now, it's fine to admit you don't understand technology, and it's fine to be in office if you don't understand technology, but you should probably listen to people who do, who can tell you that Uber's not a big deal. And if Uber does kill the taxi industry, who cares? Quite frankly, this is like the complaint, the age-old complaint. Oh no, the horseless carriage is going to kill the saddle market. Well, you know what? Who cares? That's called progress. That's called a free market. That's called moving forward. Big deal. Amazingly enough, the internal combustion engine kind of killed the idea of steam power for cars. You know, the steam power boiler manufacturers didn't complain and strike outside and demand that there be government action. At least I hope they didn't, because that's progress. That's business, and they understood that back then. But nowadays, if your business starts to go, you know, out of business, they expect a bailout or an ordinance that stops the competition from becoming better than you. It doesn't make any sense. Let business follow through the way it's going to. Don't try to intervene. Unfortunately, Chattanooga has an odd love affair with interference. Now, I think things could get better depending on who we elect later on, but right now we're stuck in this odd and pervasive and insistent age where you must be subject constantly to constant city ordinance and people telling you what to do. This is Binary, Nooga Radio.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd, right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Is your career taking you where you want to go? If not, talk to Covenant Group Insurance, especially if you like helping people. Call and learn how you can work for yourself, but not by yourself. intense but free training, plus a fantastic lead program, plus office support equals your success, your prosperity. Gross at least $75,000 your first year selling insurance. Call Steve or Jada for a confidential interview. That's 855-8484. Maybe the most important call you'll make all year.
A $500 gift card.
$500? What?
That's right, Bunky. A $500 gift card from a store of your choice. The agents at Exit Realty Scenic City are confident they can sell your house. They can do it in 99